Manager and Executive to the Director at Interfaith Power and Light, DC, Maryland, Northern Virginia. She recently joined the IPL team after a long career in the medical cannabis industry in order to help address the climate crisis with the experience of advocacy gained for the safe and lawful access for medical cannabis patients, particularly veterans. Lindsay has been a Howard County resident for 8 years and worked with multiple local coalitions and climate groups to promote electrification and building reform at the county level. Most recently, she celebrated the passage of the Clean New Building Act with her colleagues in Navajo Nation. We have a few members here tonight with us. And she is proud to be an initiated Wiccan and brings the pagan community's values of environmental stewardship to her work. Shelby Francis is an economist at the Regional Economic Studies Institute at Towson University. Ms. Francis has experience in data analysis, forecasting, regional modeling, and economic impact analysis. Prior to this role, Ms. Francis worked as a graduate research assistant on the USDA Value Added Grains Project. She also provided assistance on a food insecurity project as an undergraduate student, for which she earned the Research Impact Award at Towson University in 2019. Ms. Francis earned her master's in economics at the University of Maine and her BS in economics at Towson University. Anjali Gangala is a sophomore at River Hill High School. She currently serves on the Maryland Association of Student Council's Executive Board, and she is the co-chair of the Howard County Student Electrification Coalition, Electrify Our Future, an affiliate of HOCO Climate Action. Aside from being active in advocacy and participating in state legislature lobby days, she enjoys providing free math tutoring services to elementary school students through her self-funded founded club. She is excited to provide her insight on the impact of today's. So there are panelists, and so I have a few questions that I thought that I would start with, but we don't have to go through all of them. I'll start with one, and then I hope that there are going to be some questions from the audience as well. Okay, great. So one question is, what do you see as some key challenges to a just transition to a clean energy economy?
So that's a good question. So for the transition to a clean energy, like a fair and just economy, I believe that we need to continue with maintaining support from both the public and the government to ensure that we have a fair transition. So at the moment, though we do have some programs and some other facilities to provide jobs in the green industry and the sustainability industry, and also to provide affordable access to this clean source of energy, not many people know about this and are educated about this. And also we need a lot of support from both the public and the government to actually provide these programs and these funding. And they're not accessible to a lot of the country as well. So just making sure that we have that education and that sustainability and that support, I believe, is one of the biggest problems we face and we need to prepare to solve. So yeah.
Thank you. Shelby, would you like to do you have anything to add to that? Or
yeah, I think there are a couple of key challenges that need to be addressed in the transition to green energy. One of them being that energy companies are having trouble fulfilling the goals that they need to build the infrastructure for green energy and maintain the infrastructure. The majority of the companies that are hiring for these occupations reported that there's a lot of difficulty, or at least some difficulty, in obtaining the talent that they need. So that's definitely a big one. And then another one is finding, like, having a large enough applicant pool. There's a very small applicant pool. So not only is there issues finding people who have the talent, like out of the people who are interested in these jobs, they're not garnering interest in the work that's needed to make the transition in green energy. And then one more thing that I think would be a key challenge I know you said a bit on making this transition just and, serving the communities that typically are overlooked. And I think addressing barriers to employment is really important. Certain things people don't always think about. One of these barriers could be like transportation. Some people might not have access to a vehicle or reliable transportation to get to from a job, or maybe even the training that they need to get to. Another barrier might be the cost associated with getting the training. Part of that could be the cost of transportation, of getting a car. Another thing could just be maybe people need to get the training, but you don't have any income during the time that you're getting the training, and you don't have any income to pay your bills. So that might be something standing in the way of you getting the training for a job. And a part of that is providing wraparound services with workforce development that are happening in order to get a larger pool and even make sure that the transition also benefits communities that are typically overlooked and underserved.
So I'd like to just jump in and follow up on your point. As an economist, I'm wondering if how economists would make the case that the future benefit to the employee from the safer technologies, if that is in fact the case, in terms of the quality of life, longevity of your career, the less likelihood of illness due to work-related. I mean, it would be interesting to see economists, if they haven't already, make that case to a 22-year-old and say, you know what, over the span of your 40-year career, you're going to have a much better experience than if you're working on that rig.
Yeah, definitely. And I think a lot of the jobs that exist in green energy, they are long lasting and build. You can start out in one position, maybe as a construction worker, working with to be a manager. And so, there's a lot of benefit in making this transition, and that would be a very interesting topic to take over.
No black lung.
Yeah.
But I think what you're saying is that you have to get people into these careers before they can sort of experience the benefit. If they don't have transportation, or they can't afford to pay for a training program, there's no system to kind of bring people into it, they may not even have the option to work on a boiler rig.
Yeah, a comment I was going to make is that in other countries, like in Germany, for example, I don't think everybody goes to college. A lot of people go and learn trade. They learn those things when they're in high school. And I know that they have those types of programs in our country too for high school students, but I don't think there's enough emphasis on it.
Yes.
And I think that's something, so that you're already in the school system, right? So you don't have that issue about getting transportation for your training, you're already there. If that was emphasized.
Be interesting to see if Lincoln Tech, right down the street on Snowden, has a component that's
Not even Lincoln Tech, the Howard County school system. And they just announced that they were putting a big infusion into the ARL. And I wonder if they're going to do any solar or charging, any charging station technical.
Right.
I'm
EV
Yeah.
mechanics, or what they're going to need.
For the schools for ARL, I think they're expanding the programs more to allow for different kinds of career options, including like environmental technicians. However, our options are somewhat limited, at least the school system from what I see and experience. And they're not really encouraged as much for many students here. They're like, it's mostly big three academics focused in many schools as well. So the encouragement of like these programs isn't like very widespread or known, but it's starting to like, slowly integrate into our schools. So we're trying to like develop more diversity in these programs for sure. Yeah.
There's also an advantage to targeting on students that are on the verge of dropping out of high school. Yeah. I mean, that, Job Corps.
And I know I've heard somebody in our community college talking about how they need to think about moving towards some of these job training for some of these jobs that will be jobs in the future.
I think some of the things that should happen is the same thing that happened. Is that basically companies training people while they're on the scholarship,
Right.
target payment program. You know, they make $50 an hour, they make $50 an hour while they're training. So they don't have that economic flag or what am I gonna do while I train? And that's the only way they can work it, so that whole model is around. It's a question of the green companies, urban solar, other green companies, taking that step and saying, I need to invest my own workers, or grow my own workers, rather than depending on the workers. But
There's also the option of summer programs to acquaint them with the fact that this exists. Because for those of us who've ever done career days, you find that students don't have any idea what career is about.
I have a follow-up question, but before I get to that, Lindsay, do you have anything that you want to add?
Essentially, I think that the problem here is just a fundamental lack of understanding of the opportunity that we have by transitioning to clean energy. We would be a healthier, wealthier, and safer nation if we did take advantage of these opportunities. And even just now, I've heard a room full of people toss back some great ideas that these are things that we could be doing right now. But that's because all of you people here right now, you already are in that circle. You have some of the information. Some of you are very active participants in the climate movement. But there are so many people who just don't have that. They don't know, either because those opportunities are not there, they're not largely publicly spoken about, because we politicized an issue once more that should not be political. It's just something that in some communities, there's just not enough education. There's not enough interest in speaking to our legislators and being very active citizens in our communities and keeping that pressure on. But more than just pressure, understanding, making it speak. This is a benefit for everyone. It is beyond politics.
this is what starting out in the school system, what it goes for, started with all my knowledge, starting out in high school. It is possible that, you know, there are kids, want to call them that, interested in this, coming together and saying, I want to do this, try to get high school, but even middle school, elementary school, or even the school here in kindergarten. We are talking about environmental pollution and climate impact as kindergartens. So, you know, there is a whole opportunity for us there.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of student environmental advocacy organizations that are starting to pop up around. And there are a lot of programs that are targeting elementary schools as well, not just in Howard County, but some of my friends in Norco, they have environmental organizations, advocacy, and they have little programs specifically targeted towards elementary schools. So starting off at a young age is very important. And I think that as we're moving into the future, we're starting to see that, you know, teaching these skills, developing them at such a young age is important, so that way when they grow older, they're already prepared for this new future filled with environmental sustainability and so much more opportunities. So yeah, starting at a young age, I completely agree.
I have a follow-up question, and I think folks have already kind of gone there, but we just think it on it maybe. Question is, what do you think individuals can do either on their own or as advocates to improve this transition? Does anybody just jump in? Speak, whatever.
I think, and you had said a piece on this earlier, we touched on it, placing more emphasis on letting people know that these resources exist. I mentioned one of the key challenges being people not having the resources to necessarily obtain the training that they might need to enter into an occupation in green energy. BUT&E has programs that provide stipends, and scholarship programs, internship programs. They also do career events where they try to attract interest into jobs working in green energy. And they also place a lot of emphasis on serving underserved communities. So I think a lot of people, everybody here has a little bit more context around the issue, but maybe not what there is to do. Yeah, we don't know. So I'm sure, I know I've met people who haven't been able to maybe afford college. And some people might think, okay, well, this is the end of the road for me, maybe I'll just go there. a job that's lower skilled, so I just have to pay the bills. But there's opportunities out there to obtain training and certification with a higher level of education, while also being able to earn money at the same time and be a part of this transition to green energy. But people, if you don't know that these programs exist, how do you attract the talent? As an individual, maybe you know someone who can't afford college. Tell them, hey, you know what? These jobs exist. There's a green energy transition. Like I said, they're having trouble filling the job. That means there's demand for these people, and there's nobody to fulfill that demand. Green jobs typically have higher than average salary. That's a really huge incentive. Like, let people know, hey, these jobs have higher than average salary than somebody who went and only obtained a high school diploma and didn't obtain any more college, obtain any more education. At that same level of education, green energy jobs typically have higher than average salary. So just knowing this information generally, and then being able to let people know, hey, there's an incentive, you can get paid while you're doing the training, and then you also are going to be earning more money than you would have been earning had you not been in this field. So I think just letting people know that this stuff is here, like these resources are here, and really advocating for people and like letting people know that this stuff exists, like place a lot of emphasis on it. That's very, very important.
I wonder if the workforce development program within Howard County is doing or will be doing that. I don't know. Is anybody connected with any of those parts of the government? No, that maybe those are things that we can look into, ways to, because I mean, I can't hire anybody. I don't have a training program, right? So my question is like, who do we have? So maybe that's just something we need to research on. You guys have ideas about things that we can do either as individuals or advocating towards any kind of action, either government or whomever, schools.
I personally believe this transition is one that's going to happen largely at the county level, So primarily what we can do, what we have been doing to so far, some pretty good success is keeping the pressure on our local representatives and being very, very active and telling them this is what we want. But the deal that we make here in the Congress is we elect representatives and we tell them this is what we need for you. It's just a question of never letting up, because this is something that is very easy. As soon as we give an inch, utilities will take them on.
Well, the whole energy transition to electrification is a lot of that is becoming done. But I'm thinking that 5-7 years, 10 years maybe, we were advocating for offshore wind in Annapolis that finally passed. We took the delay. We had 8 years of the Hogan administration, which slow walked it. But at that time, like 10 years ago, people were saying, the Baltimore port could be a place where the wind turbine blades, which are huge, made, and that would provide a lot of jobs. That is finally happened. It's taken years, but Governor Ford just committed a lot of Maryland resources to offshore wind, which is finally looking like it's getting on the ground, and they are beginning to. They have reopened various points and getting it into a place where they're manufacturing the blades. So there could be offshore wind all down the east coast of the US. It's one of the best places in the world. But the manufacturing of the part is a huge job opportunity for labor that would disappear, labor jobs that can disappear from this area for a long time. Yeah, I was at the rally in Navajo Nation workers. That's right. From Ferris Point that were there. Yeah, but when the steel mill goes down, so many people lost jobs and they have that reopened and they don't feel part. That's a success story, but we need to see that same success with the jobs for home energy. Because we're lacking the electricians we need and installers that we need to make the transition.
Just adding on to the they're great adding pressure onto our representatives by contacting them, whether it be calling, emailing, whatever platform we have to like, tell them what our views are on transitioning to a clean, sustainable economy is really important. But also an education factor, not only
Bottom line. What are the environmental impacts of wind power or offshore wind power? Like what might be like the environmental costs or damage or like to sea life or
Yes.
not really good. I'm not sure. So I'm not sure if that's what our. Unless that's our- But I can tell you, oh, go ahead, Shel.
If you look online, you will see that the number of birds that perish because of climate change is monumental compared to the number that run into, things, yeah.
I work at the same time,
Right,
first
right.
There's not gonna be like.
It's acidified because the water absorbs the CO2. So a lot of the carbon levels actually are going into the ocean, and that's acidifying it, and actually killing coral reefs or anything that has to have like a carbon-based skeleton. It just that's all.
Transition and it's fuel of any home that's gonna be disastrous for many species for years that the mercury that's released when line and burn coal and things. So yeah, it's been much more toxic for many species for many years.
One of the weird things that I saw is going back wildlife around underwater. Place actually become a sanctuary. There was something to anchor onto, struggling to the same way that offshore wrecks, shipwrecks, from a life source attraction of life, underwater life. So actually, it's a benefit to have a foundation in the ocean to sit there and actually put a micro environment around that particular boat that actually increases fire that word.
Hear that from the opposition.
Right.
We do not believe it.
Yeah. Thank you. It's a great question.
I have a question. It's not a public policy question that has to do with solar panels in general. Do they actually absorb heat? Because they're absorbing, solar energy. Can they be used in cities that have these heat islands where there's so much heat to actually absorb heat? Does anybody know?
I think solar panels absorb like the photons, so light particles, not the heat necessarily. I think for the heat to be absorbed, I think they need to be some other sort of platform. I'm not sure, but I've read about like solar panels really like absorbing the photons and everything, the light particles rather than necessarily the heat. So I think we have to look further into that.
Well, it's a little, that's true. In the sense that they don't like suck heat out of the atmosphere, but sunlight, when it hits something dark, like a dark roof,
Gets
Okay.
absorbed there.
will be absorbed,
Somewhere else,
that
yeah.
those photons will actually be absorbed and turn into
So
heat.
indirect.
And so when you have your solar panels on your roof, not only is it shading the roof, but those photons are not hitting your dark roof. They're actually getting the, the photoelectric thing in there, and it's turning into electricity as opposed to being absorbed. as
Because that's
heat.
the problem in the cities.
Yeah, heat island. So I don't think anybody like markets solar panels as a way to reduce heat, but
Well,
why not?
One of the solutions of that absorption is a recommendation that environments think there is light to reflect the light back rather than have it be absorbed. Many people are not willing to do that because of the way it looks, but you would think that the panels would be reflected back rather than making it worse.
People living long as you can with house. This is a problem, but actually that would be the most sustainable.
Yes.
Put a little bit of the grass on the grass space.
Yeah.
Would be the perfect air conditioning. Rather than
Yes.
I'm pleased that I came. I believe climate change is real, whatever the cause. I think that we have a reasonable chance of somehow moderating it and not changing our lifestyle or worst case, eliminating our species. Grateful that people put together this presentation. I appreciate the panel, the different perspective. And I think the challenge is to somehow multiply the effort, the knowledge, the zeal, somewhat sensed here, get it out into people who are sitting, watching all kinds of things on TV, very entertaining, non-threatening, requiring nothing of them except a bit of another beer or coffee, which is okay. But that's the people.
Yeah,
Need to
develop
be-
some video games that work on climate.
Yeah. That would be great. That's a great.
Oh, wait, they have, actually.
They are.
Yeah, there was one I was just reading about that she's going to follow, but the sense of being to make the communities in industry and they want to market it to the colleges. Okay.
I would suggest, because I looked it up, so ARL is getting $12.1 million for renovations and upgrading of their training programs. They are
ARL stand for.
applied research lab. It's on 108. It's an alternative. It's a technical school.
Okay, thank you.
And so
People, like,
right. So and they actually have an automotive, like you can go there and become trained to be an automotive technician. I think that our OMI Green teams could write a letter to Dr. Matriano and the county council and suggest that they consider including EV charging station, have that be part of the curriculum. Because we're gonna have all these electric charging stations, just like they were showing, that are gonna break down and nobody in the county that can fix them. So we could start, the kids are already going there, there's transportation, it's part of their schooling, they get credit for it, and they could graduate with maybe a 2-year certificate on becoming an electric charging vehicle.
And Anjali will put me on electrify our t-shirt. So that's something that you guys can promote as well.
That is something that we could do with the congregations to support, to encourage that to be something that they do there.
Yeah, for sure. In fact, I know a lot of students who participate in these ARL programs, so definitely they gather students, to support organization. Yeah, for sure. I'd be doing that. Well, I have a question for the panel. What, in watching the videos, what impacted you the most? Or did you see something you learned?
That was my question. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. No, we're just waiting.
Oh, for me, and I told Bonnie this a few moments ago, I watched the series twice before I came here, except for the second episode, which I watched 3 times. To me, one of the largest and most terrible impacts of what we've done historically to fuel this country is the generational trauma that's caused by communities. It's not just today, your bills being high, living in what is essentially a third world country in the Navajo Nation because of just a lack of everything, a lack of care, a lack of concern. It doesn't just affect your day-to-day life, it affects your health, it affects your children's growth and development, it affects their opportunities in the future, it affects their education. All of those things continue. They all translate into everything being harder for their children. That's something that we don't think about necessarily. The general population doesn't think about when we think about climate. But it's true and it's accurate and it's been happening for as long as we've been in modern nation using school sources. That to me is probably the most striking thing highlighted in the films and something that I think about all the time.
With the irony that they started that power plant and it went all to the city and they don't even have power.
That's because that was always the attitude. I mean, West Virginia was actually, but they flattened. And people were for there too. There are many pockets in the country where utilities or the big companies coming. I have a comment to make to you. I came out of the National Laboratory. And there are a couple of things that we did that were very successful. One, of course, was that we didn't have many women scientists. Mathematicians. And so we started a program called Science Careers in Search of Women. And it was a question of bringing in high school students, girls in particular. But we, just to expose them to jobs and the various things that were available. We weren't necessarily looking at making them scientists, but making them understand that they needed to do math. That you have to be able to do math to be a good citizen, not let people take it at this type of thing. And I can still remember having lunch in the cafeteria with students out of the inner city, boys and girls. And one of the first questions I was always asked, how much money did I make? And that really shocked me. But the point was that their mother had told them to ask that question because when you gave a figure, no matter what it was, that's more than my father does. So it's this type of education at a elementary, junior high school level before they get too interested in the opposite sex. The second thing that was done in the city of Chicago is that the hospitals could not hire enough X-ray technicians, people to staff all of the things in the hospital. So they went to junior colleges and they developed programs where junior colleges were helping to train people for the jobs that they needed, and they gave them employment, not only during year, but also practical experience. These are very commonsensical things. And we've been talking around this. These are two concrete examples that I've experienced that have been really quite successful.
Student of the same question. Tell an environmental science, the most important thing about education, the chemistry background. They all just basically cringe because that's like the thing they absolutely hate the most about high school. And the answer is probably what you think. Environmental. Similarly, learning physics part of the solar. You need to have some idea of physics to be able to do solar condition. That sounds stupid in some ways, but if you don't know your electricity, your own voltage, grams, you're going to have a hard time making the efficient transition. So, that's something that I think we need to emphasize, that a lot of this education, a lot of people, especially lower achieving part of the class, seems like a waste of energy to take algebra, take physics, take chemistry, and basically it's something you actually end up having to teach in a job where you don't think of.
Well, and along with that concept is math, because I went through college using a slide book, so we had to calculate everything in our head. When I was teaching freshman chemistry at Rutgers, kids would come in with a calculator, just punch the numbers in, come up with exorbitant numbers, 22 significant digits without any sense of numbers. And so we need to start again with elementary school and ensure that people learn math, not just for a career, but also so that you can cheat it.
Yeah, I completely agree. STEM, actually, I think it's STEAM now, but it's very important, especially in schools and education. And I believe in Howard County, actually, I'm taking chemistry right now, but in Howard County, at least, it's required for students to take at least 4 years of math in order to graduate. And you usually need to take biology and then some sort of physical science, and often chemistry is involved too. So I believe all the ideas that here today, Howard County is still slowly starting to incorporate these ideologies in our school systems every day. And so even though students like me, we sometimes are like, oh, this is math, these are really unnecessary. It's a mandatory requirement, so we have to do it. So yeah. And then going back to the question of what was one of the biggest impacts you saw in the film, I like to add on to what Lisa's was about the Navajo Nation. I was really startled by one of the statistics about the factories there, about the amount of water they use, the like 14 million tons of water they use per day. And it's such a dry country there, and the people there don't even have access to like full bill over their own water, and they're getting 14 million tons of water per day to these factories that don't even benefit them or give them any money or profit. And that just sounded like so startling to me, like you're giving one of your most valuable resources away, you're not getting anything for it. And I was very impacted by that, and I realized it like really big importance of clean energy, so like we can start to do things fresh and new, especially in areas such as that.
Statistics sounded a little bit. This is where it doesn't just disappear.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if they're like circulating that back out, or what exactly is going on. I mean, there's huge amount
Probably
of
that's
water.
nice.
Probably going
Now.
to, probably going to cooling towers.
Yeah, if under cooling tower,
Steam.
then it's not lost, you're right. It's this cycle.
It's not
But the problem
useful
is,
to them.
because
No,
biologically unacceptable.
It's not.
So it's basically so hot. The only thing they like living in humanity is the other thing that everybody always brings up, like, for humanity is perfect. But basically, it's not.
They're only in Florida.
It's a part of.
Well, I heard in the film that unfortunately they gave the rights away.
Yeah, to the water.
So
Yeah.
that's a whole legislative.
Yeah.
piece to take back. I mean, that's raping. The people.
Right, but as the coal plants being shut down, then presumably that water is no longer being used by so it's the coal.
No, well, they don't have water anymore. They
Clean
just,
water is a very important issue for this country, because so many of the aquifers are running dry,
Yeah.
are polluted
Yeah.
by people, like with military bases where they threw all the solvents and stuff on the ground.
Sure.
It's almost, they tried, it's almost impossible. Clean water and acceptable.
And fracking
Clean
is
water
a
is,
and no snow melt this spring because there's no snow, no rain, and flooding and mudslide. So I mean, yeah, there's huge issues, and hopefully, transitioning to a green economy will help reduce some of those changes.
I think it's also worth mentioning that, having come out of a basic research facility, there's a lot of research going on to improve batteries. We talked about storage batteries because they're vital to situation where you can generate the power during the day, store it in the battery, and then it can be used at night. So, I mean, there's continuous research going on in that, and also in solar panels. They're not
but they have to
static.
mine the elements of the batteries, and that has to come from somewhere too. And that ends up impacting other indigenous communities.
There's a new article, very, very exciting. Because the rare substances used in batteries are becoming a huge issue, especially with this emphasis on electric cars. They're actually, there's actually a program, I think in Seattle, with the tech companies, that they are taking back cell phones and other batteries for small appliances like tablets, and they're extracting the rare elements from those cell phone batteries and making them into automobile batteries. And they have found that the batteries are, you would think these are used batteries, but when they do this, they find that the batteries are just better than batteries made from scratch. So there's a cost to do this, but because the elements are becoming so rare, that this is a pilot program now, but it looks like it's. I need to post that article. Too many articles I need to post to our electric podcast. I was so excited to see this, and I just saw it in the last 2 minutes.
That's cool. Well, you think about like all of the lithium batteries we have from our old camcorders and
Yeah,
our
all that stuff.
ancient, phones and stuff that are lying around.
Yeah. And because of the Earth Day, there've also been, a lot of articles that very expensive use, appliances, what to do with your cell phones and other things, a lot of people have work.
Maybe you can share that.
Yes,
information.
yeah,
That available. I know, add it to your list.
put this together for,
Dallas does a lot.
I was just wondering if each of our analysts could just briefly tell us one issue you're currently working on in this space. What's passionate to you at the moment?
So currently I'm working on electrification, building electrification, helping to educate various community members about it. And so as the co-chair of the student coalition, we're really trying to go out more students into it, get them involved, teach them about the issue. And we're looking to raise table events and presentations. Yeah, my goal is really to expand the student coalition, work towards building electrification.
Great. Thank you for that.
What other panel?
For me, it is also, so notice my fun, like to try everything, so I'm sure it's also like education. We have had amazing success in DC and Montgomery County in passing new building codes, and we have no reason that we can't replicate that here. We've just passed CD5, which is requiring study from the county to present, or the county executive to present on basically the logistics of updating building codes for new construction. We have a year to socialize the community, to talk to our legislators and get them to understand this is what we need, this is what we want, this is why, let's do this now before things become dire. And then to have that domino effect for other counties nearby, other states have that follow. In CD5 in Maryland, the mentioned article for having Howard County was for having passed that bill because we were about 100 counties in the United States to pass this legislation. That's why I say I believe that most of this will be done at a local and state level. But it is a local issue, but quite often we have amazing climate bills introduced to the floor in Annapolis, and we have to do everything we possibly can at that level just to continue to be the example. So a lot of it is lobbying. It's just a great deal of saying these codes, these laws, they need to change, they need to be written in, and we need to have this solidified as we possibly can to set a standard for this is how we need to operate responsibly now.
For you?
So I work with the Regional Studies Institute, and a lot of our work with various different private clients in order to do various research objectives. In this realm, I recently did a project that it wrapped up recently, and it was with Baltimore Gas and Electric. And the objective of the project was to assess how occupations might change in this transition to a green economy, and maybe what the top occupations that might be impacted are, what gaps exist in core competency that people needing to fulfill these jobs, and just identifying job growth and things in that realm, so that we can, number one, get the people that we need into these jobs. It also, doing this work helps BG&E develop their workforce development programs so that they offer the wraparound services that are needed to help people who might be facing high barriers to employment, as well as just people who might be interested in working in this field but don't know where to start. So a lot of our work, we wrote for Maryland, we wrote for like an assessment at the national level as well. And yeah, that's my work.
Are there any publicity?
Not that I know of. I'm not aware of it. I'm more on the research side of things. They came to us with the question, and we get into it. So I'm not very sure about publicity around it, but I do think that it's a big deal, and the work is very important. And I do think that there should be some publicity around it because if we don't have people to fill the jobs, the transition can be very difficult. You need people to install the infrastructure, to maintain the infrastructure. So it's all interconnected and very important.
Thank you. But this is great.
All right, thank you so much. So it is now
It's a school,
9:15.
it's a school night.
School night. Right, so, I would like us to thank our panel.
Yeah.
Thanks so much to Bonnie and Han for helping get the technical stuff figured out.